Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on Masechtas Bava Metzia, Daf Chav Zayin. We are going to begin on Chav Zayin and Al by the new mission at the top. Says the Masnisim. Af hasimla hais b'chlal. Also, when it comes to garments, it's also in the category of kol elu, of all of these situations where you find a lost object. So v'lo miyatzas. So then why does it specify it if in fact there is an obligation to return any lost object? So why does it say v'chein tasel simla? Well, hakish led to make the following hekish. Loimloch ma simla miyuchedes. When it comes to a garment, it's specific. Sheish ba simanim, that there's something unique about it, that there's some siman on it. V'yesh ba toivin, which also means that there are people that own it and therefore are going to claim it. Those things need to be announced. However, excluding something in which you know for sure there was yish, as we mentioned so far a lot in this parak, if you know that the person has given up hope, so then the din is that you do not have to return it because it is now yours, and therefore we can just assume again if the person gave up hope, that's again it's hefker. Says Gemara. So my b'chlal kol elu. So Omer Rabba b'chlal kol avedas achicha. When it says also simla is in this category, this general category, what does that mean? It means it's in the general category of kol avedas achicha. Anything that is your friends, your brothers, that was lost. So that includes anything that's lost. So then why does it have to mention a simla? It's coming to tell you it has to be something in which, again, has a siman and it has toivim. It's not something which is half. So the truth is, our mission is only pointing out the garment. But the truth is, it mentions other things. It mentions an ox, a sheep, a donkey. Why does it mention that? So sricha. Dikas Rachman is similar. If the Torah only mentioned that, so maybe you would think it's only in the object itself. The simanim de gufa, and the simanim or in the object itself. Avol chamor, when it comes to a donkey, be'edim de ukaf. If let's say it's regarding the testimony regarding the saddle, the simanim de ukaf, and there's a sign on the saddle, emelo mahadrinin lay. Maybe you don't have to return it. In other words, if there's no siman on the animal itself, all there is a siman on something which is on the animal, you don't have to return it. Even if there's a siman just on that which is not on the guf, the actual animal itself, it's not the animal itself, but something that's on the object, not just the object itself. So on this Rashi says, Shor v'chamor sev simla. So Rashi uncharacteristically mentions the entire source of a pasuk to help us out. So simani ukav, Rashi says, im ein lo siman b'chamor, yesh bo siman b'ukav she'olav. So maybe you still don't have to return it because there's no siman on the donkey. Doesn't make any difference because there's a siman on the saddle on the donkey, so you do. Okay. So that's the chiddush. The afil chamor b'siman ha'ukaf, that you still have to return it. Okay. So because of chamor the afil chamor b'siman ha'ukaf. So okay, that answers one of the words, but shor said the kasam achman alamli. How about the other words? So shor the afil gizas zenavai. Even when it comes to the hair of the tail, says Rashi, Shavil Seir Sheba Sofa Zanav Yakser. Even that you have to return. Vesel Gizizaisa. And also when it comes to the shearings, the wool of a sheep needs to be returned. So V'lichna Barchmana Shor, Diafil Gizas Zanavai, the Koshkin Sel Gizizasav. Let the Torah just mention the ox, which means that even the hair of a tail, and certainly you'd have to return the shearings of a sheep, so you wouldn't even need to mention seh. El Omer, this is how you're supposed to read it. Chamor, de boy Rabbi Yehuda. The fact that it says the word chamor regarding a pit, according to Rabbi Yehuda, and was said the aveda, the extra word said, l'divrei kol kasha. You're right. We're going to end up seeing that the truth is these cases, these two situations, there is no chiddush in these words. These are apparently redundant, and we do not know why they're there. Says Rashi, the Mechayev al Niski Kalev Abor Kashalon, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, he holds, unlike the Tanakama, that when it comes to a kli in a pit, you're still going to be chayev. So then, Ochara, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the question is, so why then does it mention chamor debor? Right? It's not. There's no chiddush in that word. The il rabbanan meboil hu shor v'lo adam chamor v'lo kalim. According to the rabbanan, they learn out the drasha is only if a donkey falls into a pit are you chayev. However, if a kli falls into it, you're potter. So Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold of that drasha. So therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that's a kasha, and says also kasha. Ve'emul galolim hudasa. Maybe it's coming to tell us when it comes to dung. Says Rashi, l'haksar segalolav. Because of shor havamina ki yasal gizas nava yasal. It's only come to talk about the hair of a tail of a galolim loy chashivi. They're not the waist is not chashiv. V'lo leheder. Kasam rachman akor yisrael yisui galolim. Maybe it's coming to that's what's coming to include. So no, galolim afkuri mafkuhu. Now when it comes to that, that's considered to be hefker, because a person's not going to be matriach to be able to pick up the waste of an animal in order to use it as fertilizer. That a person typically will not do, and therefore certainly ein loy toivin, that galolim have no claimants. Vidilma with simanim hudasa. Maybe it's coming to tell you it's a simon. It says Rashi, that maybe you have to return it with simanim even if there's no witnesses. It says Rashi, as we're going to ask a question later on regarding simanim deraisa rabbanan. All right. So as the Gemara continues, the iboy one, siman deraisa or rabbanan. There's a question: a siman, is that a din deraisa or is it din rabbanan? The fact that you have a sign. So Kasar Rachmana said, "Yafil b'simanim hadrinan b'simanim deraisa." That a siman alone is enough to prove that it belongs to you, and therefore you have a chiyuv to return it. And therefore, maybe it's coming to teach us this answer to the question: is the din of simanim, is it deraisa or is it derabanan? Okay, so the Gemara says no, that's not what it's coming to teach us. Because Amri mediktani lohutana with simanim gabi simla. We already learned, as our Mishnah said, that it comes to teach us the fact that it says simla regarding a garment in which has to have a siman. The katani masam imichadashesh bo simanim eishbo toivin chayvel hachros av kol davar shesh bo simanim eishbo yeshlo toivin chayvel hachros. So shemamina, obviously that comes to tell you to sell lavu simanim udasa. Says not coming to tell us anything about simanim. That's what the purpose of simla is. Therefore, again, we don't have anything to teach us for sen. Therefore, it says akash. Tanurban. The pasuk says asher toivad. So you have an item which is lost. So that's aveda she'ein b'shavar pruta. If you have an object which isn't even worth a pruta, so then it does not have to be returned. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer matzasa. Actually, we can derive from the pasuk matzasa. You found something of substance. Now, both of them apparently say the same thing, that the din of returning something is only when it's a shava pruta. So therefore, I'm going to ask my benayu, what's the real difference between them? So one answer, I'm going to you're right. Mashmois darshan hika benayu. The whole mar nafkale ma'asher taivan, mar savar mar nafkale mimatzasa. So really, maybe there is no nafkamin al halacha. It's just that they derive the same halacha from different sources. But the maskana, it doesn't really make much of a nafkamina, because in either situation, you're potter from returning an object which is pachs v'shavar bruta. That's answer number one. So Gemara says, 1 second. So one who learns out from asher taivad, so so what does he do with the word mitzasa? You ask the kasha the way around. But we're saying if you learn out this din of asher taivad, so the question is, what do you do with the pasuk of matzasa? What is the purpose of that? He says, no, that's not a problem. Diyam Ravnoi, matzasa, you found it, means diyasal yadim ashma. It means that it's actually has come into your hand, says Rashi. The drasha is that the only time there's a chiyuv of returning an object is only if it's a chicha, if it's someone who is your brother, someone who's a yid, not referring to an idol worshiper. Well, Madcha says Rashi, Shaviris Kenaini Muteris, that even if you physically picked it up, you still do not have a chiyuv to give it back to the Ovi Kachavim. V'lotema, don't say the kiyum of Shaviris Kenaini Miditerach Achorel. Maybe it's just coming to tell you that you don't have to be matriach to try to find the guy. But let's say you actually physically already picked it up, and it's already in your hands, so maybe then you do have a chiyuv of returning it even to Levi Kachavim. So the chiddush is that no, umatsasa is even diyasel yadeh. Even if it's in your hands, still you do not have a chiyuv to give it back to Levi Kachavim. So okay, so that's how he answers that. Now the other way around. Now if you learn out umatsasa, hayasher taivan maya, what does he do with that pasuk? So huma boil Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan Misham Rav Shem Ben Yocham Minayin laveda sheshatva nahar shimuteres. How do you know if you have a lost object and all of a sudden got swept by the waters, that at that point it's mutter, because basically at that point the person is going to be miyayish. There's no way you're going to get back because there was some huge storm that took away my object, and now it may be hundreds of miles away. Who knows? What do we learn out from that? Something which is lost and can be found by all people. Yatzazu, excluding this case where the water swept it away, that it was lost from you. The river takes it away, no one can get it either. So you don't need to return it, because it's not something, it's like you lost something and it fell in the street, so someone else can pick it up. But if it's in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, Mastabra, it's gone. No person is ever going to get it. And therefore, if you happen to be the person who comes across it, so there's no way you're going to have any chiyuv to return it. So therefore, all the same drushes, the same halachic status is being learned, that Aveda is not pachas m'shever pruta. The din is you don't give it to an Ovi Kachavim, and also by shatva nahar you're not going to be chayiv apparently to return. Now the idach, the problem is that these are two separate drushes. How did these other people learn this third thing? There's only two psukim, and there's a third thing. So how does the other person learn the third halacha? How does he know that there's no chiyuv of giving it back to Ovi Kachavim? So navkle, the fact that it says mi v'u matzasa, so the fact that it has this extra vav, so it has this extra vav yisera, so therefore that extra vav is telling you, so in that situation, you don't have to give it to the Ovi Kachavim. V'idach hadu Rav Yochanan manole. So how does the other one learn out the drasha of Rav Yochanan by Shatvanar? So nafli mimenu, because it says mimenu. V'idach mimenu l'mashmalei. So you can, okay, fine. Mimenu maybe or not. Maybe you could use it as a separate drush or not. So that's everything. So that answers our question. There's no nafkamina lahalacha at all. Okay. That's answer number one. Rav Omer, the truth is, there is a difference between Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda. Pruta shehuzla ikabenayim. This is in the Havamina. If you have a pruta that it went down, says Rashi, the mishasa veda sheva pruta, when it was lost, it was worth a pruta. Umishom Metzia huzla, but when you found it, it lost value. So mandiyam ramasher tavad ika. So one who says that it was lost, so it was a pruta when it was lost, and they have to return it. Mandiyam matzasa, it's telling you when you found it, Leika, because the fact that you found it was Paxim Shever Pruta, you don't have to return it. So maybe that's the nafkamina. 1 second. I don't understand. Even if you learn Asher Tavad, but it also says you found it. So if at the time you found it, it's Paxim Shever Pruta, it's not a Prut, it's right, it's Paxim Shever Pruta, you shouldn't have to return it. So that's not the nafkamina. Ella Pruta Shehukri Kaminayu. We're talking about a situation where it actually went up in value to a Pruta. Mandiyam Matzasa Ika. When you found it, it was a pruta, so you have to return it. The one who lost it, it's all telling you when you lost it. When you lost it, was Pakas M'Shever Pruta, so therefore you don't have to return it. So you can ask the other way around. The pasuk also says asher tovad. You have to have lost something, which sounds like you really need both. It needs to be a pruta when it was lost, and also it needs to be a pruta when it was found. So then, how could you say there's a nafkamina between the two? El maskan is like this: pruta shehukra v'huzav v'chaz v'hukra ikmenahu. It was a pruta when it was lost. It went down, and then later when it was found, it became worth a pruta. So, mandir masher tavad ika. When it was lost, it was a pruta, and therefore you have to return it. Mandi arma matzasa. It was found beinan deispa shir metzia mishas aveda ve'ad shas metzia. So according to him, this obviously needs a lot of work, but he holds that it has to be a pruta the whole time. And therefore, if it went down at any point, then the din is that you would not be mechuyev to return it. So that's the second answer. So the question 1. Tanakama nafkalim asher tavad prat laveda shein b'shever pruta behuda nafkalim matzasa umay asa matzasa l'tanakama umay asa asher tavad l'Rabbi Yehuda. So he said matzasa, according to the Tanakama, is coming to tell you that even if it's in your hands, that you can keep it and you do not have to return it. Here it says to a nachri, to a kachavin. It's the lashon of the Gemara. And asher tavad Rabbi Yehuda matters in an aveda that was swept away from the river. So in that situation, it's lost for all people. There's no way you're going to get it back. So therefore, that situation, you have completely lost hope. Okay, let's continue. So now the Gemara asks the question that we've been discussing before, Iboilhu. Simanim diraisa or dirabanan. So when it comes to a siman, which we've been talking about, you find an object and you have to, your chayv hachar, the person gives a siman. So is that diraisa or dirabanan? So my nafkamina, what's the difference? Don't you have to return it if it's diraisa or dirabanan? Anyway, as we continue to Chavzayin Mebez, if someone produces a siman, so your answers, L'haduri get isha b'simanim. Not referring to you found a lost object, but what if you found a get? And the woman is able to produce simanim, says Rashi. Shavim and a shliach. Ha-meviu koidim shnasla. So the shliach loses the get before he gives it to her. So what's the din in that case? Iyamr diraisa. If in fact it's a din diraisa, mahadrinan, then we will give it back. V'yamr dirabanan. If it's a din dirabanan, kiyab dirabanan tekanta b'mamona. Maybe they'll only say that simanim work is when we're dealing with a din mammon, because there's hefker based on hefker. However, when it comes to a din of isser, ish, maybe simanim will not be enough, and we will not give it back. So tashma, afa simul hais b'chalal kolelu. So our Mishnah said that a garment is included in all this. So therefore, v'lomiyot. So why does the pasuk mention this specifically? Hakish will have to make a hakish. Is again, it has to have a siman and people claim it. And therefore, you have to announce. So what do we see? We're quoting a pasuk. A pasuk is from the Torah. So obviously, we see that simanim are deraisa. Right? It says no tana toivin it's trichale. Simanim kedin natzba. The truth is, simanim are really derabanan, but over here we're talking about coming to teach us the din of toivin, of claimants. Says Rashi, below mikra elas machla krab alma. The whole notion of simanim may just really be derabanan. So what do we learn out? The pasuk is telling me to tell you toivin. It says Rashi emuti midi diyayish v'afkari, excluding something which is hefker. Right? It's just saying that if something is hefker, you can keep it, but if it's not hefker, you have to announce it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that's a din deraisa. Okay. Tashma. So the Gemara is again going to try to prove whether or not siman or deraisa or rabban. Tashma. Chamor. Regarding a donkey, bisimani ukaf, and the simanim are on the saddle. Ema. So what do we see? It says simane ukaf. So if it's a raya, that's simanim deraisa. No. Ema be'edi ukaf. Maybe it means you have to have witnesses. If you have witnesses that recognize b'tfiyas ayin about the saddle, then you return it, but not because of simanim deraisa. Tashma. So you should keep until person claims it. What does it mean? Give it back before someone claims it? What does that mean? Obviously, you have to wait until someone comes and claims it. Ella darshehu. You should inquire im ramayhu Oeno Ramai. Figure out, is this guy lying? Is he tricking to try to get this object that's really not his? So how is he possibly tricking? My love is simanim. By you requiring simanim, just because the person says, oh yeah, that's mine. So you say, oh yeah, let's figure out if it's true. Tell me what you know about it. Give me a siman. And the fact is that that's what's required, simanim. So it must be because it's deraisa. Lo, be'edim. Again, same answer. Tashma. Ein me'edim ela al parts of haponim. Im hachaitim. So this is brought down Yavamos. It's a person cannot testify, a person that died, in order to say, yeah, this man died so that his wife can now get remarried, only with parts of paniv. In other words, you actually saw his face, im hachaitim, together with the nose. Then you have to have seen the entirety of this person's face to have known that this person has died. Even though there's a siman by his body or his kalev, Rashi says begadav, he's wearing a special clothing that he was known to have worn, that's not enough. Obviously, the fact that you need parts of panim, the fact is that it's not enough simanim, because simanim are not deraisa. So it's a proof. So Army note, gufo, when it says gufo, it doesn't mean his body, because simanim are not deraisa. It's referring to something which is very generic. For example, dorach v'gutz, that he's tall or short. Or this isn't a siman, since many people are tall. So that just means it's just not a siman. But if you could say something about his body which is unique, so that would be enough. Kalev, the chayshinan l'she'ela. The reason why you can't just say, oh yeah, I saw the guy who was wearing this particular shirt, but maybe he borrowed that shirt from that guy. So who says it's his and that he died? So again, that's the reason. So one second, if we're really concerned that something was borrowed, so chamor b'simani ukav heichi mahadrinan, the fact that you have a donkey with a saddle, you shouldn't be able to return that either, because maybe the guy borrowed the saddle. So Amrina ukav lo shuli inchi ukafa. Person doesn't lend out their saddles. Mishum cave leilachamara, because it scrapes up the donkey. So basically, it's not something that a person would ever lend out. So therefore, if you see the saddle of this donkey, so therefore that's a sign that it actually belongs to this guy. Mashen can a shirt, okay, you can borrow a shirt, a hat from someone. That's not a proof that that was that person. So iboy sema, that's one answer of what it means, kalev and gufa. Another answer is kalev. It means chivure uvasumki, white and red. So what does that mean? Again, you're just saying, says Rashi, inza siman shaharbi kale yesh. So you say, oh yeah, I saw a red shirt. A lot of people have red shirts. That's not enough of an identifiable siman. That doesn't constitute as a siman. But maybe if you talk of a good siman, siman deraisa. El hadasanya matzah kosher b'kis over arniki. Let's say you find it's tied, and this is Rashi says a shliach she maybe get. So you have a shliach that brings a get. V'avadi many loses it after some time. Matzah kosher b'kis, and the get is tied to a money belt, or b'arniki, of a tabas, or some type of a ring. O shematzu ben kalev, it's found among other kalim. A feel is man merubim after a long time kosher. We say that it is good, says Rashi. The afla did not maybe get v'avad himenu matzel is man meruba apostle. Even though normally if you wait a long time before you find this document, doesn't have to mean the get, you find this document, then we say it's apostle, because again we're chayish, as the Gemara in Gittin and elsewhere, Bava Kama too actually, discusses that maybe it fell from someone else with a similar name. There could be another Yosef ben Shimon in the same city or another place. There could be Sharis Metsuyos. So it's possible that this is not a proof. But if it's actually tied together with something which is identifiable, it works. Now, again, if we're afraid that maybe you borrow things, and you can therefore not assume necessarily it's yours. So kimatsu kasher b'kis samai kasher nechash l'sheila. You can say the same thing. Maybe someone borrowed this guy's wallet. No, amri kis or arniki v'tabas lo mishali inchi. Again, these are things that a person will typically not lend out. They're not going to lend out just like they're not going to lend out their saddle. They're not going to lend out their saddle. Also, they're not going to lend out their money belt either. So this is actually, we're going to explain this, but first I just want to cleanly finish question 13. It says like this, TA 13. It says, "Be'elu devarim leichashin l'she'el ma'idin o machzirin b'simani hakelim." 4 answers. U'madiyah ein chashish mehem l'she'ela. So one answer, which we already did, is ukaf, right? Ukaf, a person doesn't lend out because it's going to scrape up the donkey. Okay. Also, when it comes to these things, kis, arniki, and tabas, also they're not going to lend out. So why? Kis arniki, when it comes to money, your wallet, your money belt, mishum demisamne. What does that mean? Says Rashi, menachshe. It's a bad omen. Yomer similar other marshal kiso shemoichelo mazolo. If you end up giving out your wallet, right, it's not a good mazel for you. Okay, you can understand why, right? It's almost like you're losing money. Here, take my wallet. I'm like, you have no money. But tabas, what's the problem with a ring? Why do people not lend out their rings? Mishum de Mazayif, because he's concerned of forgery, right? That a person uses a ring to be able to sign stuff, says Rashi, ish chesim nikr b'tabato. So if you're going to lend it out, it's almost like giving someone the ability to sign your name on a blank check. You don't want that. So therefore, you're not going to lend out a signet ring, which people can end up writing whatever they want, and the people are going to think it's all about you. Okay, so we don't really have an answer up until this point as to whether or not simanim d'oraisa or rabbanan. So leima ketanoi, ein ma'idin ala shuma. So it says you cannot testify regarding a wart on a dead man's body. It says Rashi, ha'me'idin ala isha l'hasiya. Again, we want the woman to get remarried. Her husband presumably is dead, and we have this interesting siman. I'll call it a siman. Wart, a shuma. So we say that if this person has a siman of a shuma on an aver, right? He has a wart on this part of his face, right? So, oh yeah, I saw the guy who's dead. I saw he had a wart that everyone knows is on this part of his face. So on this, ein me'idin al shuma. That's not a good enough testimony. V'lezer ben mahavoy oimer me'idin al shuma. So we have a machlokus whether it works. Now, my lab hakamifagi. Tanakama Savar, that it doesn't work, he holds simanim d'Rabbanan, and therefore she's not going to be able to get married for that reason. That's not enough of a simanim or d'Rabbanan. Elazar ben Mahavoy Savar simanim d'Oraisa. So therefore it's a machlokas tanoim. Lo. Amarava d'Kuliyam is simanim d'Oraisa. Really, a siman is d'Oraisa. So therefore, why the Tanakama say she can't get married on a shuma? The hacham is shuma matsui b'ben gil k'mefagi. This is referring to a shuma that can be found b'ben giloi, says Rashi, hanoilid b'shaito shanol b'mazel echad. So there's a couple people that have this same shuma basically. So therefore, it's not 100% it's the same guy. Marsav shuma matsui b'ben giloi, marsav shuma ina matsui b'ben giloi. That says Rashi, hanoilid b'shaito shanol b'mazel echad. So some people that were born during the same time, they all developed the same wart, if you will. No, it's not going to be matsui b'ben giloi, and therefore, because of that, it should be a siman. The question is that a siman could change, says Rashi. Let's say when he was alive, the wart was black, but moso nasa silvana, it could change color. There can be discoloration upon the person's death. So therefore, we say like this. When it comes to a siman, it's possible that it changed after death. Mar Savar, okay, what's make sense? But Simon was Sulishtanos Achamisa Mefi. Mar Savar is Simon Sulishtanos Achamisa. Mar Savar is Simon Enosin Lishtanos Achamisa. So the fact that you say, oh, I know this guy has a black wart on the left side of his cheek, but maybe it's not the same guy, because maybe after he died it changed color. And therefore, it should be good from Simon. So therefore, we shouldn't rely on it. Maybe a simon alone is not enough, but a simon movhak, which is very, very, very strong, that it's very, very, very unique, a huge, huge simon, which is not a typical regular simon, but it's something above and beyond. So marsav is shuma simon movhak. Maybe a shuma taka is a simon movhak, and therefore you can rely on it. Marsav is shuma lav simon movhaku. Okay. Fine. So let's look at question 2. Ein ma'idin al shuma v'lazer oimer ma'idin b'may k'mifagi. If you want to say that simanim, that kolyam is simanim d'Rabbanan. So in that, if it's only d'Rabbanan, the question is, suma, do we say a shuma is a siman muvhak or not? Question TB 14 rather. Ein ma'idin al shuman v'lazer ben hamavi oimer ma'idin b'man nechaku Tanoim Khan. Doom. That's it. What is the machlokas? And he put in parentheses, Gimel will find him chutz me'im simanim d'oraisa d'Rabbanan. You can't go there. Okay. You can't simanim d'oraisa d'Rabbanan is the obvious one. Okay. And we say no. Maybe it's like this. And what I wrote, Chaylik b'ben giloi im hamum yoch l'shtanus achamisa and b'simin mufak. Beautiful answer. Okay. All right. Weiter. So. Again, we don't really have an answer to this, and apparently it may not necessarily be a machlokas tanoim. Fine. Amurava. If in fact simanim are not deraisa, so heich mahadrinan avidatab simanim. Understand? So we said because of hefker base and hefker, but why should you be able to return a lost object if it's only the rabbanon? So denichale lamaitza veda delanahad b'simanim. It's good that even the person who found the lost object should return when a simon comes. So that one day if I lose something, it'll be good that I'll be able to do simanim. So it's very interesting. It's actually because it's a good thing for me to be able to even lose this item with a simon, because one day I'll lose something and then I'll be able to produce simanim. It's very interesting svara, which we said the exact same svara. I just had it. I think in the previous Masechta that talked about Nemushois, Taka. So when it came to the question of whether or not we say that regarding Leket Shechan Peah, so when it comes to collecting them, so if an Ani comes, the question is, can his kids pick it up? So the answer is that even though maybe a child can't pick it up because they can't be kaina, but nonetheless, it's good for people to accept it, because then my children will be able to pick it up and it'll work, right? Even though technically a child should not be able to pick it up, but I'll be okay that if your kid picks it up, because then in my own town, as an ani, my child will be able to pick it up. Okay, this is a very similar concept. Understand, it may not be returned to the correct owner if their simanim aren't really great. So then I don't understand, if simanim are really the rabbanan, so how does this work? It's good for a person to be able to produce simanim and to take. He knows there's no witnesses. He says, no one knows the exact simanim. And I'll be able to give clear simanim and then be able to take. This is what Rashi says. The question of Heichmad Rinan, understand, it's a suffix, so how do we know you should give it to him? So the answer is that it's pretty clear that a person is demonstrating that he knows something about this object that no one else knows about, which is probably a proof that he really it does belong to him. Even though simanim really are Rabbanan, but nonetheless, it's not really a suffix. This really does go to this person. It makes sense. If let's say you have someone Yasaloiva. So let's say you have 3 documents, which you saw in previously, and they all then say that there's the borrower is the same person, right? You have 3 documents, and it says that Reuven borrowed money. Reuven borrowed money. Reuven borrowed money. So it's pretty clear that Yachzor Lova. You should give it to the Lova because probably since he's the common denominator, it belongs to him. For that matter, Shloisha Shalova Min Ha'echad Yachzor Malva. If it says that Shimon lent to 3 different people, 3 different documents, it all says Shimon is the Malva, so then it probably belongs to the Malva. So therefore you should give the documents to the Malva. So Malva. Well, how do I understand that logic? Is it good for the Lova to return it to the Malva? Why would he want that? Because the way it works is that the Malva is holding onto this document, this shtar chayiv, so that means he can collect it from the borrower, from the Lova. Why would a Lova want that? It's based on this logic. Oh, it's good. Why is it nichale? Well, it's not good for the Lova that the Malva should have it. Why? It must be the fact you have 3 people, 3 documents which all have the Lova's name. It must be that belongs to him. It's obviously doesn't belong to the Malva. It must be a milova nafel. And so the kudos help. It must have fallen from the borrower. Why? Why do you give it back to the lender? Again, the fact it's just logical. If you have 3 different documents with different people's names, but it has the same Lova's name on all 3 documents, it was the borrower's, and he dropped those 3 documents. It's logical, and therefore that's the reason why we're going to give it back in that circumstance. Okay, and I think we will stop there. Ad kan.